Hello and welcome to the drawing and dimension assignment for the Rover class. We're going to go ahead and take this model, dimension assignment V4. I will save a copy of this into the student files folder that you guys can all have a copy of it. You will need to insert this into your current design. So whenever you start a design, you'll have to save it with a name, and then you can insert this part into your design. It'll be right here. It's in the student files folder. It's right here. And right now it's V1. So if somebody mistakenly saves over top of it and changes it to V2 or V3, you can just click the arrow down, find V1 created by myself, and you can go back to that version 1, open that, and insert that into your design. Okay, so you've got full use to use this and put your design. You do not have to model this. But while we're over here, let's take a look at the data panel for a second. One of the things that would be helpful if all of you will click on the gear icon and then select this box up here where it says sort by last updated. All of your newer items will be up top rather than just by name. So go ahead and make that switch. A couple of default settings we want to check on. If you click on your name and then click on preferences, two of the settings that you should have. First one is default units. Your design units should be inches, manufacturer should be inches, and then generative should be English and inches as well. Okay, and then for simulation, you can leave all those as they are. But for default units, design, manufacture, and simulation and generative should be inches in this tab. The other thing is we want to click on general. We want to make sure that you have Z up as your default modeling orientation. That will help us if we ever need to take part of your design and do it on the CNC or the laser. So once you have those, go ahead and click apply and OK. Just a reminder that whenever, I'll just make a new component here, that whenever you're starting a new component, to make sure that you start out your model tree by right-clicking and then select New Component. That way it gives you a new component and it is activated, and anything you do modeling from here forward will be saved into this folder under this active component. If you need to make another component, go ahead back to the top level again, right-click, do another new component, and now you've got another folder that is activated. You're going to make sure that you pay attention to where you are working. Make sure that whichever component you are working on is activated. That'll keep your model tree and your design history down here clean and easy for other people to follow. If you ever need to go back and change something, make sure that you activate the component that you're working on and do all the work in there. Otherwise, you'll get sketches and bodies folders and other things all over the place. Okay, that's just a reminder. And then the last reminder is just to make sure that you have 6 saves for all your work. I'm only on V1 because I just imported that in there. But if we were to go back to my folder, I'm up to V4 when I made it. So just make sure that you are saving frequently, just so that we have a good design history. That's a requirement for all Fusion assignments in the Rover class or just anything in school. Okay, so you guys will insert this model into your design. Please don't change this one. But you're going to insert this model design in your folder. Go ahead and save it. I'm going to get one of your saves out of the way. And then you can either come down here to start a drawing from design. Usually I'd end up just right-clicking and do create drawing. For this example, I want to make sure that we have a 17-inch by 11. That's the largest piece of paper that will fit in the school printers. So if we needed to print this out, we could. Sometimes when you're putting things onto a drawing for the laser, you'll have to do a different size sheet. You need the 48 by 36 or the E sheet to get the full size for the laser. But since this is just a reference drawing, 17 by 11 is fine. Make sure we're inches, ASME, create new from scratch and full assembly. So we'll hit OK. It's going to open up a whole new tab, and this has got the drawing symbol, and it's going to give us a blank sheet here. First thing we need to do is put down our basic overview of what this part is going to look like. To do that, we're going to start with the front orientation. It's already got it pulled up. If for some reason you cancel out of it and it's gone, we are putting down a base view. And we'll bring up that same exact thing. We'll try to make this, we'll say 1 to 4. I'm going to make it as big as you can. But since this is a 4-foot long beam, I'm not sure if it's all going to fit. We may need to shrink the size down. We're going to put our front view kind of down here in the bottom left quadrant of our paper. And we will do just the visible edges, 1 to 4. We'll hit OK. We'll see how that works out for us. Next thing you want to do is come up here and do a projected view. When you select that, you have to select the parent view, which is the first one. And then you can start putting in the other views. And I can tell already this is going to be too big, but we'll just stick it in there anyway. This is going to be my right view. I'll come over here. This will be my top view, and this is way too long, as you can see. And then I'll come over here and I'll do kind of a isometric view. Or orthogonal. Yeah, isometric, sorry. We can enter because we're done. So obviously the size is wrong on all these. They won't fit on the sheet of paper. So I can click this and edit the view. And when I change the scale on this, we'll go from 1 to 4. We'll try 1 to 8. And I think that'll fit. It changes all the other scales as well, since this is the parent and these are children. These are all projected off of this piece. So now I can just grab this, click on the gray rectangle, and I can slide this down. It's close to fitting on the page. Let me grab my parent view again. We'll slide it down. I don't want to get this too close to the title block, but it looks like these are going to fit now. And then this one, I think is happy right there. Usually for the isometric, the angled view, I'll right click and edit this. I would like for you to do that as shaded. And hit close. So we've got the 3 views. We've got the front view, the top view, and the right-hand view, and the isometric. And this is too small to provide any significant details, but will absolutely give you a good idea of what's going on. So you can hit fit to the screen, get an idea of what our part looks like. The next thing we'll do is we're going to add a second sheet here. And now this will give us the opportunity to show a little more detail. So once again, I'm going to add a base view. This time I want to add the right-hand side. We'll look at the length of this thing. And that's too small, so we'll go back. Try 1 to 8. Let's get a little bit bigger. Go 1 to 4. That's about as much as going to fit on the top of the page. So we'll go ahead and put that in there. That is still just visible edges. I'm okay with that, so we'll hit OK. And what we're going to do is we're going to start putting dimensions, and I purposely made this a little difficult, that it's got all these kind of stepped angles to it. If you try to do just the normal dimension tool, it's going to be way too tight. So we're going to come over here to the detail view. It's going to ask us to select the parent view, which is that one. And then the next thing it's going to ask us is we're putting where it's going to zoom in on. So we'll have it zoom in here on the center part. And you can drag this out to be a bigger detail to cover however much you need. You can have the open end facing whichever way you need to. But it's kind of common that the curved part faces the rest of the model that you're cutting off. So we'll zoom in right about there and hit select, and then I'll go ahead and it gives me a chunk of that thing that I can zoom in on. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this down here, and I'm going to make this even bigger than they have it. I'll click to place it, but now I'm going to change this to 1 to 1. We'll change that to full size. And if you've got room and you need to, we can go to 2 to 1. I think that's going to be a little bit too big. We're not going to have any room for any dimensions, but if you need to go bigger than 1 to 1, you can do that. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to move this detailed text, click on the gray block, I'll move it over here out of the way. There's a couple different types of dimensions we can do. If you click on the arrow, it goes through and lists all of them. A lot of times Fusion will try to guess. If you just click the dimension tab, the dimension command, it's going to kind of guess what you're trying to do. And I want to measure from this end to here. I'm going to put the 2-inch dimension in from the edge of this to our last step right there. And now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do the baseline dimension. We'll take a look at what that's going to look like and what it's going to do for us. So when I click the baseline dimension, it asks me right where the cursor says to select the base dimension. So you have to have this in place already. And then once I select that, and it's coming over here from the right hand side, I don't want it to come from the right hand side. I want to come it from this left hand side over here. So I'm going to hit escape and I'm going to ask for the baseline dimension again, and I'm going to select this side of the base dimension, and now it's going to do what I want it to do. So I'm going to start selecting these lines. The green square will highlight, and I've already got the 2-inch, so I can hit escape. Oops, not escape, enter. Oops-a-daisy. Baseline dimension. I want to start from this left-hand side, and I just want to measure all of those points right there. So now I'll hit enter this time. Thank you very much. You can take this 2-inch. I should have had it down at the bottom right there, and then probably I can take all of these and scoot them up a little bit. All I'm doing is clicking on the dimension, clicking in the center box, and then moving it up a little bit just to not take up too much room. So a lot of times you'll put your tape measure on the end of a piece and you'll measure from the tape measure all the way down to whatever you're doing. So it's from this line 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8, 2 inches. And these numbers, when I did it in CAD, I was kind to you all and I made nice easy dimensions, but sometimes subtracting these in your head is not going to be easy. And if there's some kind of tool, if we're using the router or some other tool to make all these cuts, I don't necessarily care how far they are from the end. I want to know how far apart they are from each other. So our next option for dimension, same thing, I'll come here and click the dimension. I'll click on this line, I'll get my 2 inches again. We'll put it in there. Is instead of the baseline dimension, I'm going to do the chain dimension. And same thing, I will select this edge, and then same thing, I'm going to start selecting these corners. This one or this one will give me the same horizontal distance, and I want to know all those dimensions right there. I'm going to hit enter this time, and you can see it gives me all those dimensions. The problem is they're all on top of each other, so this is where you're going to have to kind of clean things up a little bit. I'm going to take this one and kind of slide it out here to the side. Take this one and slide it on top, this one, slide it on top, and then this one, slide it up there. And then we can take this 2-inch and we can either bring it down here if we like that, or if you want to, you can move it up here. There's no absolute set standard of where these go. You just want to make sure that they're readable. This point 2 points to the first gap. Well, you know what? I missed a gap right here between this one and this one, so I should have added one more in my chain dimension. So you guys get to do that in your drawing. This isn't perfect. You should have this gap measured as well, and just put it in a nice vertical list right there. But you get the idea of how to do a detail. You can do the baseline, where you're measuring from the end, or you can do the chain dimensions, where it's one at a time. And I probably would move all of these down a little bit, and I would put this one on top so that these are off to the side. But now this is up in the way of that. So this whole thing should be slid down a little bit. And I will allow you to do that. Okay, The other thing we want to do is when we look at this end, we also want to look at this thing. This is the right-hand view. We're going to look at this from the front view. So I can still take this view. I like this size and where it is. I can take a projected view, select this as my parent view. Oh, I can't do that. So I will put in a base view. Go ahead and be that way. I'll change this to 1:1. I'll stick it right here so I can give myself room for some dimensions. We'll hit OK. So same thing. I told you, and you can look on this other drawing, that these are all 0.2 apart. But if they weren't 0.2, we would need to dimension this. So same thing. You could do a baseline from here and the distance to all of them, or you could do the chain dimension. And I did 0.2 on this side and 0.2 on this side, so they're going to be the same. But until you put that in the drawing, someone doesn't know that. So I think I'll go ahead and I'm doing this edge to this edge. That's my 2.5 inch. And for this one, I'll go ahead and do, let's do the chain. I think that's going to be better information. So I'm going to select this base dimension right here. And I can grab all these corners or all these significant vertical features, and it's going to put in, I think I need to put that top one in there too. That's what I missed last time. And then hit enter, and they're all in there. So they're all in there, but they're all on top of each other. Okay. So this is where I can grab the 2.5, and I'll slide it out of the way a little bit. And then now I should slide all of these things in a lot closer. That moves the number, but it didn't move the arrows. So if I click this, I can slide them all in like that. So I'll have to click this 2 inch, grabbing this top rectangle and sliding it over, and clicking this 2 inch. So it's going to put them where it thinks is helpful, and that may or may not be where you want them. So I'm clicking the number, grabbing this top gray box, clicking and dragging to move it over there. And I have to click to place it, sorry. Click it, click and drag the top box, and then click to place it. Click the number, oops, click and drag right there. Click to place, you'd think I'd remember. And then let's get this bottom one. There we go. Okay, so those are all nice and neat, so now I can slide this one in. Okay. And these arrows are a little confusing, but I think it's pretty clear that those are all 0.2 inches. And this is 1.3, and that's another 0.2 right there. So this is doing the chain dimension. We can see that, but let's go ahead and do the baseline dimension over here. The same thing, I need I'm going from this corner to this corner. It's my 2 inches. I think it does, I can't remember if it does the baseline inside or not. So we'll put it down. I'll do the baseline dimension. I'm going to measure from this left corner here. So I'm going to select this side. And now when I put it, it's going to do all of those as I click on them. And right there, that's 2 inches. So I'll just ignore that because I already had the 2 inch there. So I'm going to hit enter. And I can drag this all the way down to the bottom. Okay. So I would like for you to do the same thing. Do the right-hand view, detail of this front section, do a baseline and a chain going this way. You can make this a little bit neater by shifting all these things down. You have to put down a new base view, and I want you to do chain dimension this way, and then all of the baseline dimensions going that way. So you get all the detail you need on both of those views. So that's the close-up tool right there, and then baseline versus chain. And the next thing we're going to take a look at is some of the measurements pertaining to the holes. we've got all these holes up here, and we've kind of ignored them up to this point. So we'll come down here, make another sheet. I'm going to add a base view. Oops, click on the drawing, add a base view. We want that right-hand view again. I think this was 1 to 4 that fits in there. We'll do it right here in the middle of the page. Select OK. For these circles, we can go ahead and add a center mark to all those circles. It kind of gives us some coordinates to grab onto and just some nice markings. I'm just selecting all of those. If this was a flange that had several bolts around the edge, you could do the bolt pattern and it would mark that bolt pattern the very same way. So this one, I kind of put these all in random, so this is going to be much easier to do, I think, with a baseline rather than, because you would measure from the end and go down. And this is going to be a good example from here. We'll go to the nope. So I'm getting ready to click over here, and it says 48.025. I selected that corner, and now it's going to measure from that corner to whatever else I grab, so it's not necessarily horizontal. So I don't want to go from that corner. I'm going to escape. I want to grab that whole line, so not to zoom in. So it's going from this whole line. I'll zoom out, and now it's going to this line. So now that should be a nice, easy 48 inches. And we'll put that there. Okay, so this is the problem we ran into with the mortise and tenon last year, as we measured from the end of the wood. I can do this baseline dimension, click here, and now we can grab the center of all those holes. We can click on all those dimensions. Let's see where I'm going. It's going to go right off the edge of my paper. That's so nice. Okay, I'm going to hit enter, and now I've got all those baseline dimensions. You're going to have to move all these down, learn from my mistakes, and then you have to move this one back up. Okay, so all of these will get scooted down, and this one will be on top. You can do that. We've already got the details in here. The problem is that we weren't good at tenons, so we cut this first, and when we tried to measure all these holes, you couldn't put a tape measure on the end of that tenon. You could only put it here on the shoulder. So what you may need to do is come in here for the dimension. You may need to grab this line to the base, come back here and grab that line. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the top set of measurements. If you try to measure these after you cut the tenon, it's going to be hard to get a tape measure down there. But you can get a tape measure right here. So depending upon your drawing, you may need to do the measurements from the end or from here. Neither one is correct or incorrect. It just depends on knowing what the person who's going to make this has to do. If they're going to measure all these first, then measure from the end of the piece of wood is fine. Then they can cut all these things. If these have already been cut, then when you want to measure from this angle here. So that's what you would want to mark. And the same thing, if you're going to measure with a tape measure, you can measure from here all the way down. So let's do the baseline dimension again from here, and we'll go ahead and put all these on there. Okay, and we may run out of room, so you have to scoot these down and scoot those up. It may be a little bit snug. I'm going to hit enter so I don't lose it, but it should fit. Okay, so either the top set of dimensions or the bottom set of dimensions, when you do the baseline, it's very clear that they all start from this element of the rover right here, this element of the piece of wood. These dimensions all fit right here. When you're just measuring the distance between, it's a little bit harder to tell. The last thing we want to talk about is radius dimensions versus diameter. Usually diameter dimensions are going to be for drilling holes. So if I click on this, the dimension tab, and grab a circle, if it sees a full circle, it's usually going to give you that symbol. That 0 with a line through it is not a 0. That's the actual symbol for dimension, for diameter. If you click over here, this is not a full circle. So when I dimension this, Fusion is going to read that as a radius. And that's what we actually do in real life. When we grab a drill bit, I want the diameter of the drill bit for that hole. When we talk about the radius of curvature of something, we're talking about a radius. But if you wanted the diameter of this for some specific reason, if you wanted to mark it, you can come down here and pick a diameter dimension and force it to give you a diameter measurement off of that circle. Okay, so you can force it to give you what you want. So once again, that 0 with a line through it, it's not a leading 0 for a decimal. I know it looks like that up there. It's the symbol for diameter. I'm going to go ahead and delete that because I don't want it. The other thing you'll see frequently is that all of these circles are the same diameter. So I can come into here, I can right click on this. No, I can't. How if I just double click it? Select view. Let me escape. I'm going to double click this. So now I can come in here and I can edit this value. I'm going to say 10x of this number. And that means that I'm going to hit enter. And there are 10 of these 0.625 diameter holes. So if we count them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, there's 10 of them. So that way you know that all those holes that look the same are the same. The last thing you can do is you can come down here. Let me go back and fit my sheet. I'm going to zoom out a little bit since my numbers went up. But you can come down here to the annotation settings. And this will allow you, here, I can display trailing zeros or leading zeros. So this, let me zoom in on this. Come back down here. If I click leading zeros, now it's got a 0.625. And you can clearly see that that's a diameter symbol, not a leading 0. You can also click display trading zeros. So this is 1.0000 inches. Okay. You can also see that you can change the linear dimension precision. Right now it's 0.1234 decimal places. There's not much that we can do in Rover that is that accurate to the decimal place. So 3 decimal places is more than enough. But if you want to change it, that's where you would change it. And I do not want trailing zeros. I don't want leading zeros. It says annotation unit. If I uncheck that, the inches go away, so we definitely want that. And then angular dimension, precision, all those things are right there. If you want to change the font, don't change the font, leave it as Arial. But if for some reason, if you needed to for another class or another thing, you can do that. Text height, if you wanted it smaller or bigger, you can check in there. You can also come over here to the sheet settings, get rid of, let me zoom out a little bit. Sometimes when we're cutting on the laser, we don't want the title block. So right now you can just get rid of the title block and get rid of the border. The title block, you can get in there and change it. You can change the sheet dimensions on every single drawing you have. But for right now, we'll just leave them the same. We want the border and the block. Those are standard engineering practices. Oops. But just know, sorry. Just know that you can come down here and change those things. If you needed this to be bigger, if you can't read it, you can change the height or the font. So that's your assignment. Make sure that as you do this, that you save it. It's probably good to save once or twice during every sheet, so you get to 6 saves. I want this page with the front, right, top, and isometric view. I want the second page. This is the right-hand side with a detail of the end, looking at it from the right side and the front side. This is the baseline dimensions. These are the chain. This is the chain, and these are the baseline. And these numbers are nice and easy. You can do subtraction in your head. But when I went over to this sheet, the numbers are just crazy decimals. I put them in there at random, so you can't really subtract and get those numbers. If you needed to, you could certainly go in here and do all the base dimensions between these things. If for some reason there was a bracket that went from this hole to that hole, and we're putting a bracket on top of those, and we needed the distance between those two holes, then you can certainly go in, and instead of trying to subtract those two numbers, you can just add that dimension in if the difference between those two is a specific valued number for a reason. Okay, but you do not have to do that for your assignment. I want to see the baseline dimension on the top going from the end of the material, and I want to see the baseline dimension on the bottom going from this shoulder. This is where you would actually be able to put your tape measure. So make sure you save those 6 saves, put them in your student folder, and then put up the PDFs and the screenshots as it says so in the instructions. Thanks, and if you have any questions, reach out to me via email or Slack, or you can talk to me in class. Have a great day.